Do I have a treat for you? It is the middle of February, the month of love, and whether you're celebrating Valentines or Galentines or having a day in by yourself and want to do something florally fabulous, or you're doing a DIY wedding and want some inspiration, whatever your reason, I'm here to prove that there are seasonal sustainable flowers to be celebrated at any time of the year, including February. Now, many florists and a lot of the floral industry would have you believe that there is no local flowers, that we must import roses to get beautiful Valentine's flowers or wedding flowers on February, whatever it might be. But I'm here to say they're wrong. There is seasonal sustainable flowers, I promise you, and they are just as glorious, yes, just as glorious as roses. And the best part is they haven't been imported, they haven't been dunked in chemicals up to their neck. If you're a bride and you're breathing this in, you're not breathing in heavy chemicals. If you're a groom and breathing it in, you're not breathing in heavy chemicals. It's wonderful to use local, seasonal, sustainable flowers. So whether you're a flower farmer, a florist, somebody looking for more inspiration for what you can find at this time of year, or a gardener wanting to do a bit more with the floral produce that you have in your garden or that you've purchased from a local flower farmer, check this out, because we are going to make today a fabulous February floral candelabra, and it's going to look gorgeous. Now, this is a real treat of a demonstration for you, and with all of my demonstrations, the garden tours, all the tips and tricks that I'm giving you, it takes a long time to create this content, and I hope you appreciate the effort that goes into it. And that is why I have set up a Buy Me a Coffee page. Basically, it just acts as an incentive to carry on, but a bit of funding towards my plant fund and learning fund, so I can continue to grow and share as much as possible with you, because of course this does take a long time and I want to share as much as I possibly can. So if you enjoy everything I'm creating so far and this fabulous demonstration, do check out my Buy Me a Coffee page, because a little goes a long way and really does contribute to me carrying on. So on that note, once you've checked this out, come back to this page and let's make our wonderful February floral candelabra together. Let's go! Right, now I'm starting off with, surprise, surprise, a candelabra. Now you can find these, you don't have to buy an expensive one, from charity shops, from eBay, from Freecycle, from Vinted, from other various websites, various sources, but there are candelabras out there. You don't have to spend a fortune. This lovely one is one I spotted in the charity shop. Keep your eyes peeled when you go to the charity shop. People give away such gorgeous things, and it very much is one man's trash is another man's treasure, and this is my treasure. And it has this beautiful detailing with the swirls going up into each of the candelabras, but of course we're going to cover that up today, and it's going to look like we have got flowers and foliage just floating mid-air with the stem below and the candles above. Now, before we get started, it's really important I make a note to you of health and safety. When it comes to candles and it comes to flowers, of course we don't want the flames and the flowers meeting, because of course that could be disastrous. So I would always encourage you to use fake candles with the electric glow, those fake little ones, or if you are using real candles, two things. One, make sure the flames are as far away as possible from the foliage and the flowers. That's number one. And number two, make sure they are never left unsupervised. Now, if you are doing this for an event or a wedding, you must check with the venue owners if you can use real candles. I've known many a wonderful friend who've been determined to use candles on their wedding unprotected, only to get there on the day and be told no they can't, and not have a backup with some fake ones. So first of all, fake ones are always the best way to go, but if you really do want to have the real candlelight, do make sure you either protect them. You can often use hurricane vases if you're on a table, but obviously in this we can't use hurricane vases. Those are the ones that kind of shoot out at the top, and beautiful glass. But if you are using candles in this, make sure they're super tall, they haven't been burnt before, and keep the foliage and flowers as low as possible. But of course, this will increase in size with foliage and flowers, but just be careful, and do never keep it unsupervised. Right, that's health and safety over. Now we've got our wonderful candelabra, we're going to make the mechanics that's going to hold our flowers and our foliage in place. And for this, we're using wonderful, drum roll please, chicken wire. Now let me bring it closer so you can see it. Now this chicken wire, I folded over a couple of times so that you can see the gaps are a little bit smaller than what they would have been when I just had one sheet. And you can also see I've cut 1, 2, 3 holes in it. Now be very careful when you're using chicken wire, it's sharp, use gloves. You can get plastic coated chicken wire, which is a little nicer to mould, but whatever you do, promise me, if you are using chicken wire, and promise yourself, you will reuse it, because this is all about not just seasonality, but sustainability. So we want to make sure that we promise ourselves that once we made this and we've done with it, whether it's for an event, whether it's for a meal, whatever we're using it for, that we will deassemble it and we will reuse it. And things like this, if you know you've made it for a particular vase or a particular object, you can keep it stored with that object so you don't have to make it again. Anyway, that's the first bit. Now what we're going to do is very, very carefully, and it's a bit fiddly, we're going to slot this chicken wire that I've moulded into about the shape of a long pillow over our candelabra holes. And it is fiddly. This is why it's good to get a candelabra that you're not too worried about scratching. It is beautiful, this, but knowing that I haven't paid £1 million for it makes it a lot easier when it comes to getting that chicken wire over and worrying about scratching it, because of course, if this was an absolute fortune, I'd be having a panic attack right now. But once you've got all of your holes that you've pre-made, just cut into it, and use wire cutters. Don't use snips, don't use scissors, use wire cutters on chicken wire, because it'll save your snips and it will save your scissors and it'll save your wrist, all things we want to save. Now you've got it over, and what we want to do is we want to just pinch the bottom in. Now you can actually use a little bit of the wire itself. Nearly couldn't find it there. So can you see? That is just a bit of one of the ends of the chicken wire, waste not, want not, and all I'm going to do is use it like a clip tie, twist it around, and I'm going to make sure the sharp ends are facing up inside it. And again, I'm going to keep this with this so I can use this again. So I'm just going to pinch it at the bottom. Can you see? And nice and simple, I'm taking one side and bringing it over to the other side. Now for ease, I will twist it at the bottom, but I will bring that twist back up to the top. We'll pretend I did that really nice and quick then for you. Almost there. Can you see it? Just through. A nice little twist. You get the idea. There we go. It's a little fiddly, but it makes our life easier in the long run. And once that's nice and twisted in place, like that, I'm going to rotate that twist so the sharp bits are up on the inside. And the more you twist, the tighter it gets. Da-da. You knew this would be the longest part. Right. And we are done. Right, that's in place. Now, I can insert as many stems as I want in this, but they would have to be things that are good out of water. So if you are doing this for a Valentine's or for a wedding, it's worth testing a few stems that you think you're going to use in advance to see how well they fare out of water. But don't worry, because a lot of things will need to go in water, especially if you want to make a spectacular display. We have a solution for it. Now, things that can go out of water typically are foliage that's very leathery to touch. For example, laurel. That's really good. It can withstand being out of water for a long time before it wilts. Think of things that go in Christmas wreaths. I wouldn't put holly with this myself, but that is a good example of something that could last well out of water. So just do a quick test, particularly on foliage, and see if it lasts for as long as you need it for. If you're doing it for a wedding or for a Valentine's, you might only want it for the day, but if you want it for a week, test some foliage out. Just give it a go. Now, for the stems that need watering, you're probably thinking, how on earth are we going to get water to this? This is the brilliant secret. Now again, before I show you this, you must promise me that you're going to reuse these. Again, it's all about sustainability as well as seasonality. I've been to quite a few churchyards and quite a few funeral remembrance parks, and I've seen mountains of oasis. Locally, mountains hidden behind the gates, and it all goes to landfill. And we don't need it. We have to eat, we need shelter, and we need water. Those are our 3 basic needs, but we don't need imported flowers. Flowers are wonderful, they're wonderful, and local flowers in your area are wonderful. And we don't need to have mechanics that get thrown into landfill. Floristry and gardening should be green, it should be eco-friendly. So any mechanics you use, reuse, or make them compostable. Now, the thing we're going to reuse to hold our water are these. They're called water vials. Now, you get them and they're a little plastic tube, and they come in various sizes. So again, check the stems you're using and check if they fit. And they have this little silicone lid with a hole in, and you fill it up with water, and you put the silicone lid on, and it's very, I don't know quite how this works, somebody would have to look at the science, but look, no water is coming out. Well, a tiny drop if I really shake it, but overall, it really holds its water well. They don't do well upside down, I find, but they can handle being on their side, they can handle being a little bit on an angle, and they can handle being directly up. Now, you've got two options with these water vials. What you can either do is you can start and fill this up with the foliage that we're going to use. I'll talk you through that. And then you can insert your stem already pre-inserted in your water vial and corkscrew it into the mechanics. But what I tend to find is doing it that way, I move the foliage that's already in place and the top of the water vial shows, which is really annoying. So instead, what I'd recommend, but try it yourself and give it a go, is to insert the water vials already exactly where you want them. It doesn't matter if they slightly protrude, but they won't protrude as much as if you were corkscrewing them in at the end. And fill this with as many water vials as you think you'll need stems. So if you think you were going to have 8 focal flowers and 8 stems of interest that would need to be in water, that would be 16 water vials. And you insert them accordingly where you think you're going to want them. So I'm going to try as much as possible to put them on this top section here and slightly facing out. The flowers, I can manipulate them so that they arch to fill the space. So I don't need to have my water vials facing down at any point. The flowers can do that for me. But we're going to fill this with the water vial. So literally, take your water vial and corkscrew it in the correct place that you want it. Now this will take a while, so I'm going to do this in fast speed so that you don't have to watch me do it. But if you're doing this at the same time, feel free to pause the video at this point or play it back slowly, whatever's best for you. But for everybody who's just watching this round for the first time, I'm going to go through it fast so we can skip on to the next step of putting in our foliage. But I promise you, this is going to be such a floral demonstration. You're going to love what we're going to create today, and it's totally going to be competitive with imported roses, I promise you. So I'm going to get on with that, do a time lapse, and we'll get on to the next step. Right, we've got our candelabra, we've wrapped it in that chicken wire, making sure there's lots of space to still insert our stems. We've added loads of water vials, filled them with water, pre-filled them, and inserted them in for all the stems that need to be in water. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take an evergreen foliage that lasts well out of water. Now what I've gone for is a super easy ingredient to get hold of. This is common laurel. Now if you don't already grow it in your garden, I bet it wouldn't take long for you to find a neighbour who did. And I'm sure you could knock on, very politely of course, and ask if you could have permission to take either a few long stems that you could cut down short, or a few little tips. I'm going to use about 21 of these tips. You can even break them down to individual leaves. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to particularly focus on the back, making sure I'm framing those beautiful little candle holders and then putting the individual leaves in between these water vials, just starting to cover our mechanics. Now, it's really important, I'm going to keep on saying this, that we make sure if we're using real candles that we use tall candles, because this foliage and the flowers are going to make the mechanism double in size. So we want to make sure the flame is really far away from the foliage and the flowers. Or better yet, you can of course use electric candles where they have a fake flame. But if you're using this for a dinner party and you really want to use real candles with real flames, just make sure you do not leave it unattended. Don't let the candles burn longer than for an hour and a half. Just keep your eye on it and use your common sense. And obviously, as I say, make sure you use tall candles so that the flame is as far away as possible from that foliage. Now, I'm going to insert my foliage now. I'm going to do it on a time lapse, so this will come up super fast for you. Obviously, it'll take me a little while, but it's so I don't bore you by inserting the stem slowly. So we'll go through it fast, and then I'll come back and do the next step with you like this, talking to you, and then speed through it again. So on to step 2, after I've filled this in with laurel. Let's go! There we go, and you can see how much that's increased in volume. Now what I'm going to go in with next is rosemary, another fantastic evergreen plant that again a lot of people grow at this time of year. If you haven't got it in your garden, I'm sure again with permission you will be able to find somebody nearby who does. But of course you can use other evergreen foliages Test how long they last out of water for yourself and give it a go. Now I'm going to cut these super short and I'm going to really fill in those gaps. So I've got a few laurel leaves left aside just in case I want to fill in any gaps at the end. But truthfully, I think the rosemary is going to be the thing that I really fill it in with, because I can go much shorter and much closer to those water vials, because of course we want to see the flowers that come out of them. And if I fill this all with laurel, it'll just look like a mini hedge rather than an arrangement. So I'm probably going to leave it there for the laurel, but like I say, I've got a couple of leaves left aside just in case. And now I'm going to cut the rosemary super short and insert them around the water vials to cover them up. Again, I'm going to do this super fast so you can watch me go at double speed, and then we'll come back for step 3. And you can see just how much that rosemary has filled in all of those gaps and covered up our mechanics. I've still got some rosemary left aside in case at the end I need to fill in any gaps, but it's done a really good job, and we can start to add some colour now. But just again, got to have that health and safety. Of course, rosemary is filled with oil, so if you are using real candles, and I do actively encourage you to use electric ones, but if you are using real ones, again, please make sure the flame is miles away from the wonderful foliage and flowers, and of course make sure you use long ones and do not leave it unsupervised. Again, I will emphasize that health and safety. Now we're going to add some wonderful colourful stems. So I'm going to start off with lovely heather. Now this is heather I've had for ages, so it's actually starting to dry, but it's so beautiful. So again, this can stay out of those water vials, but if you want to keep it fresher with the fresh colour for longer and you've just picked it, then you can of course insert it into the water vials. So I'm going to insert that now. Again, I'll do it super quick and then we'll go on to the next step. So you can see how far a few stems goes, and what I've done with this heather is I've made sure I kind of keep it a little bit mirroring. What I've done on one side, I've done to the other. Now you can of course play around with this. If you like a big clump of one colour here and a big clump of one colour there, you go for that. But I personally find it quite pleasing to have it even. Now we're going to start inserting stems into those water vials, and I'm starting off with a skimmia. This skimmia with its beautiful red berries is Skimmia pabella. Now I'm actually going to, if I come up close, I know it's sacrilege, but I'm just going to cut off all of the leaves because I want to have all of the focus on that beautiful red berries. I only need a very short stem, always cut on an angle, because if you think this is in effect a vase and you never want your stems to land where they can't get water up. So by cutting them on an angle, they're far more likely to get water up. Now this is a woody stem, so if you wanted, what you could do is you could sear the stem ends for about 10 seconds in boiling water, and in effect what that does is it expands the bottom of the stem and it makes it easier for it to absorb water. But for this creation it won't be needed. So you can do that if you want a longer vase life, but it's dead easy. Now I'm going to show you a water vial out of the chicken wire, how easy it is. You just simply insert it into the hole. Voila. Now you could, like I said at the beginning, you could, if you wanted, do the foliage and add the water vials in separate, but I find it more tricky. Now I'm really having to get into that chicken wire. I can do it, I can twist in, and like a kind of screwing action, I can get it in. But the top of the water vial is protruding, and it's likely that the top of the water vial lip is going to get knocked off by the chicken wire. Whereas if I notice my water vial here, which is nice and hidden by that foliage, I can insert one of those stems in, and I'm going to keep these quite low, so it should be a little kiss of red has gone all over it. So again, I'm going to do this super fast because of course it'll be so boring if you watch me do it in real time, but hopefully by these explanations and then seeing it quick time, you can still follow along. Of course you can pause it whilst you're doing this, you can slow it down, whatever works best for you, but obviously I'm going to make sure it's entertaining for you as well as florally fabulous. So I'm going to get on with with inserting those skimmiers, and then we'll meet back up for the next step. Look at the difference those skimmiers have made. Aren't they glorious? And I was so tempted to keep on going and going with this, but of course we have more water vials not to only be filled with skimmier, but to be filled with other things. But of course, if you wanted to fill it all with skimmier and leave it like that, you could. But I want to add some focal flowers, some drama, some voluptuousness. And here's what I'm going for. Again, always seasonal, always sustainable. These are wonderful camellias and wonderful hellebores. Now, hellebores are one of my favourite flowers, but it's very important to note that when you pick a stem from a hellebore plant, you want to make sure that the stamen on at least one flower has started turning into seed pods, like that. So if both of these flowers were ringed by this fluffy centre and neither of them had seed pods forming, can you see the difference? If they were both like that and neither of them were like that, I wouldn't pick it. However, because one of them is like that, it will have a longer vase life. If you pick them when they're both like that, because quite often on a hellebore stem you will get more than one flower, but if you pick them when they're both like that, you'll have 1 or 2 days vase life. Whereas if you pick them when you've got seed pods forming, you can have 1 to 2 weeks, which is far better. And generally, the fatter the seed pods are, the longer the vase life. So typically this will probably last about a week. Whereas if I had nice fat seed pods on both of them, it would probably last about 2 weeks. Now I'm going to insert these. I'm going to cut these down a little shorter, but this stem has to be attached to this one. So they're gonna start to pour out of this, which I'm gonna absolutely adore. I've only got a few camellia stems, but again, like those skimmiers, I'm going to insert them into those water vials. Again, I'll do it fast, but you can of course pause this and slow it down. It's just so it's not boring for you, and then we'll get on to the next step. But of course, like I say, if you wanted to finish it here, you could, but I think these finishing touches are absolutely worth it. Anyway, let's go. Oh, look how scrumdiddly-dumptious that looks. Don't they make such a difference? And I realised in the video before I made it go fast, I said that these were the finishing touches. I didn't mean to say that. We're going to move on to our finishing touches. These are, of course, the stars of the show. And if you haven't got a hellebore in your garden, I highly encourage you to get one. If you plant them in the ground, they'll self-seed readily, so you'll get lots of hellebore babies. They don't typically come true to the mother plant. They tend to revert back to their murky, soft, dusky pink green colour, but still exceptionally beautiful. And you can also propagate them by division to get more plants. So again, you can get a real bargain if you wanted. If, by the way, you want a video on propagation by division, let me know, because that's something I can do. But I highly encourage you to get them because they're great at this time of year. And of course, they're locally grown, they're seasonal, they're sustainable. We're not relying on imported flowers dunked in chemicals, those roses that rot from the inside out where the whole head falls off. We're not relying on them. We've got wonderful local, seasonal, sustainable flowers right on our doorstep that has a fantastic February display. So what I'm going to add for my actual finishing touch is wonderful corners. Now again, I'm going to make sure I keep those stems nice and short because we don't want the stems getting anywhere near the flames. But I just want to say a lot does go into these demonstrations, which I hope you can appreciate, and I want to share as much as I possibly can with you. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I've got a Buy Me a Coffee page where the link is in the bio, where if you appreciate the floral demonstrations, the garden tours, the tips and tricks, everything that I'm doing, you can of course buy me a coffee, which I'd be very appreciative of, because that helps act as an incentive to carry on and goes towards my plant fund and learning fund, so I can share more with you. So I'd be very grateful if you could check that out. Now we're actually going to go on to our finishing touch, and we are going to add these wonderful little stems of cornus. They don't need to be in those water vials, thank goodness, because they're all full. I can just dot them around, well, place them lovelily, and they'll really just look if I can find an empty spot, I think that adds just a bit of movement, a bit of whimsy. And now you might want to leave it like this, but for me that's a bit static, a bit stiff. And these twigs, the little branches just shooting out, just make it a bit more romantic, a bit soft, and just give it a bit of an ethereal quality. So we're going to finish off with those corners and then finally put in our candles, watching it of course, and making sure they're super tall away from our foliage and flowers, and that will be it. So again, I'm going to whiz through it so you don't have to watch it slowly, but you can of course pause this if you're following along, or make it slow, whatever you prefer, and then we're going to finish it off. I really hope you're enjoying this one, because I think as far as British seasonal sustainable flowers go, I mean, come on, this for me is already far better than a bunch of stale roses, but that's just me. It's such a subtle difference, but it really does make a difference, those corners. It just softens it, gives it that movement, gives it that ethereal quality. And even without the flowers, this looks absolutely gorgeous. And you can of course recreate this. And if you're on Instagram, do tag me in what you create. I love seeing other people's creations. Now I'm going to readjust this camera so we can see, or readjust my tables, whatever's easiest, so that you can see the candles, and we'll light it together, supervised, and enjoy the whole effect. The moment of truth. These are safely secured in these candles. Very, very tall, definitely supervised. Like I say, you can of course go for fake candles with the fake flickering flame, but I want to give you the proper effect with real candles. Safely, of course. And look at that. How gorgeous is that? You do not need to import your flowers. We have seasonal, sustainable, fabulous flowers right here on our doorstep. And you can make this for a wedding. You can have fantastic dinner parties or a romantic dinner with this. Whatever the occasion, give this a go, safely with the candles or using fake ones. And I really, really hope you've enjoyed this video. Like I say, if you have, do check out my Buy Me a Coffee page. I'd be very grateful, because a lot of effort goes into these. And I must say, I was inspired by my wonderful friend and mentor, Georgie Newbury of Common Farm Flowers, to set up not only this YouTube page, but my Buy Me a Coffee page. She is a wonderful, wonderful florist, flower farmer, gardener. If there's something that Georgie doesn't know about cut flower growing, it's not worth knowing. So do check her out after you've bought me a coffee. Thank you. I really hope you've enjoyed this, and thank you again. CTFN, ta-ta for now. And just a last little shot in the dark, because even in the dark with the candlelight or fake candlelight, it looks glorious. Very romantic. Wonderful for a February romantic dinner. Wonderful for a wonderful winter wedding. How many times can you say wonderful in a sentence? I'll tell you how many. Probably 5. You count them and tell me. Anyway, there you go. Thought I'd share. Don't know why I'm whispering. The darkness makes me feel like I must do romantic, romantic.